Hi, everyone, and welcome to our SEAC meeting for this evening for November the 29th. Just admitting people in. Just a reminder that our meeting tonight is being recorded and live streamed. If you will join me in our opening prayer in the sign of our faith, in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. We come together in hope from different community groups, answering the same call to service, pieces of the same puzzle. We come together in gratitude for the trust placed in us, for the opportunity to serve, pieces of the same puzzle. We come together in respect, aware of our diversity, willing to work for the good, pieces of the same puzzle. We come together in awe of the wonder and beauty of each of God's children, pieces of the same puzzle. We come together in God's name, and as we work together toward the same goal, each piece of the puzzle begins to fit neatly into place, creating a breathtaking picture of love, compassion, courage, and grace. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. I believe we will be moving on to our land acknowledgement now.
As we know it today
is rich in the history and modern traditions
of many First Nations and the Métis.
From the lands of the Anishinaabe
to the Attawandaron,
the Haudenosaunee,
and the Métis.
These lands surrounding the Great Lake
are steeped in Indigenous history.
As we gather today
on these treaty lands,
our Catholic social teachings
call us in solidarity
with our Indigenous brothers and sisters.
So honor and respect.
The four directions.
Lands, waters, plants, animals, and ancestors
that walked before us.
All these wonderful elements of creation exist,
gifted to us by our Creator God. We acknowledge and thank
the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation
for being stewards of this traditional territory.
Thanks so much, Andrea. Okay. Again, welcome everyone, and I hope you had a great day. I'm looking forward to a great meeting this evening. We are moving on to item 1.2, which is the approval of the agenda. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to take a look at the agenda. And if so, could I get someone to move the agenda?
I'll move it, Brenda. It's Maria.
Okay, thanks. So moved by Maria. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second, Diane.
Thanks, Diane. Appreciate it. Okay, moving on to item number 2, declarations of conflict of interest. Do we have any declarations of conflict of interest this evening? No? Great. Okay, moving right along, we have 2 presentations this evening, moving into our first presentation. So I'm welcoming Dr. Lisa Collymore, Sita Jayaraman, and Andrea Swindon. Lisa Collymore is our Chief Officer of Research and Development. Sita is our Senior Manager of Human Rights and Equity, and Andrea Swindon is our Manager of Strategic Communications, who will be doing a presentation for us on the Student Census. So welcome.
Good evening, and thank you very much for inviting us to share a little bit about the upcoming census. So the Student Census of 2022 is really an online survey where we'll collect identity-based information about our student population, and we're excited to be able to give you a little bit more information through this presentation. Andre, if I can request you to please switch to the next slide. Thank you. So what we're going to be sharing today is a little bit about what the Student Census is about, what kind of information we're trying to create, information about a pilot that we had done earlier this year, and how we're preparing to do a board-wide census in the spring of 2022, and some communication plans and next steps. So we're really excited to be able to share this information with you. Next, please. So it's really important for us to collect identity-based data so that we can really understand the lived experiences and identities of our students, because as a board, we're committed to supporting every student to achieve, believe, and belong. And collecting this kind of data will really help us address systemic barriers to student success and well-being, and help us foster a more welcoming and positive learning environment. I also wanted to highlight that this sort of collection of data has been mandated under Ontario's anti-racism, the 2017 Anti-Racism Act. And so all school boards are required to collect this kind of information in keeping with the Ontario's anti-racism data standards, and collect identity-based information. So again, this is not unique only to our board. All boards in Ontario are required to collect this information. Next slide, please. So this is sort of a sample of the kinds of information we will be collecting. And there are 10 categories, so from Indigenous identity, ethnic origin, race, religion, disability, etc., etc. These are some of the categories in which we will be collecting information from students to better understand who our students are and how they're achieving their potential. Next slide, please. Again, to reiterate that it's really the purpose and the intended outcome is to verify, measure, address, and monitor gaps in any kind of systemic disparities that may be revealed through the data collection. Next slide, please. And so the work of data collection is really well aligned with our board's equity and inclusive education policy, and data collection itself is a key pillar of the policy and is in line with our commitment to creating safe, inclusive, and welcoming learning environments that support student achievement and well-being in our Catholic schools. And so human rights and equity are guiding values that are consistent with Catholic social teaching that affirm the dignity of every human being. So really, data collection is about supporting student achievement and well-being. And I'm going to now hand over to Dr. Collymore to lead us through the results of the pilot that we did. Over to you.
Thanks, Zita. Good evening, everyone. So in preparation for our board-wide census, last year we undertook a pilot study, and our study really had 5 main goals. So we wanted to determine the feasibility of the study protocol and identify any weaknesses. We wanted to test the appropriateness of the data measures, so how we would collect the actual data. To test the data collection process, so to see how long it took people to complete the questionnaires. And we also are testing the data entry, the coding, and the appropriateness of linking the data to other historical data that we've collected elsewhere. And finally, we wanted to test whether the census questions were actually asking the intended questions and whether the format was understandable, etc. Next slide. So it was a pretty lengthy process from start to finish. It started off with Zita and I securing some funding to do this work, coordinating and listening to other boards who are farther along in terms of what they've done, creating all the documents needed for communicating out the purpose of the census, setting it up in the various platforms, and then of course piloting in a few select schools, and then gathering all that data and making sense of it. Next slide, thanks. So what we did was we recruited from 6 schools in the municipalities of Oakville and Milton, and we heard from overall 223 participants. And although that may seem small for a pilot study, it's good. And even more importantly, we heard from K all the way to grade 12. So we heard from people across the board. And overall, we were able to refine and meet all of our study goals in terms of refining the process, landing on a survey platform, and we just have recently started linking it to historical data. So our results really solidified the process, and we are well prepared for the board-wide census when the time comes in the new year. Next slide. So the student census will be implemented this school year. It opens on February 28th and it goes until April 4th, 2022. The student census is voluntary and all of the questions are optional. The students will be invited to complete the census in 2 different ways. So for kindergarten to grade 8, parents and guardians will be invited to complete the census with their child or on behalf of their child. And for students in grades 9 through 12, it will be completed during class time, and students will be given additional supports if they need it by special education staff. All parents will be notified in advance of the survey collection or census collection, and they may opt out if they don't want their child to complete the census. So we're happy tonight to share with you the promotional video that a bunch of stakeholders have participated in. And it tells you just a little bit about the goals of the census and why it's so important that we hear from as many people as possible. Thanks.
In our cultural background in Indigenous culture, storytelling is important, and knowing who you are and where you're from is the foundation of what we do and who we are.
Gathering reliable data is really important to the work we do here at Halton Catholic. As a Catholic school board, we believe all of our students are made in the image and likeness of God. Therefore, they possess a certain inherent dignity. So how could we not work to support ensuring equitable outcomes for all of our students?
Halton Catholic Trustee School Board is preparing to implement a board-wide census in the spring of 2022. Gathering robust demographic data such as language, race, religion, disability, and Indigenous identity will help us to identify and address barriers to student success and well-being.
The importance of collecting student data is to know who's in our school so that we can gear our learning and gear our education towards student outcomes to make sure that all students achieve, believe, and belong.
It's important to collect demographic data because it makes groups or other people feel more included.
In my school community, it's important to collect demographic data because it allows schools to better understand different backgrounds, characteristics of group of people, ethnicity, and race.
Collecting census data, to me as a parent, is vital. It is vital because it is giving a voice, it is recognizing the diversity, equity, and inclusion of communities across Halton.
When we're looking at specific data, like Indigenous data, it's very, very important to know who our students are, to make people feel that they belong and feel welcome, because for far too long, Indigenous students did not feel welcomed, they did not feel like they belonged, and they certainly did not achieve.
Having the collection of the student census allows us to collect this in an objective manner.
Personally, I believe that it's important for students to complete the new HCDSB census because I think that with the information gained from this census, our school board will be able to make much more inclusive spaces for all students.
As a Muslim student, my lived experiences are definitely different than other students that go to the school. I'm very grateful for the inclusivity shown by the board as it allows me to be the best version of myself.
We know that when we are collecting data about sensitive information, that it can raise concerns about privacy and stigmatization, particularly among families who've experienced discrimination.
As a transgender person, I am hoping my voice can be heard. It might help the people who are trans to not feel alone because they're not alone. And it would make us feel a lot better and more included, that we are heard, that we're seen.
We want to assure you that when we use and collect and disclose our data, we will be following and in compliant with the relevant legislation, and that we will be using protective measures to ensure that we protect your personal information.
This commitment is enshrined in our equity and inclusive education policy and is aligned with our commitment to students to support every student to achieve, believe, and belong.
It is important for all students to complete the student census so HCDSB can gather important information about students in marginalized communities so they can help students achieve, believe, and belong.
Ultimately, gathering the data will allow us to ensure that all students will be able to reach their God-given potential and that we can ensure that all students can achieve, believe, and belong.
We encourage all students and families to participate in the board-wide census. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I encourage all students, no matter what identity that you identify with, to take the student census, because it's incredibly important to take to acknowledge the different disparities that students face in our board.
Please fill out the census information.
I'm here today to encourage you to take part in our upcoming student census.
Yeah, by taking the time to provide such information, it allows those who are assisting us, and it takes a village to raise our children to have better resources, to know where perhaps there are some gaps or some areas that are lacking, and gives an opportunity for those needs to be met.
I encourage you to participate. I encourage you to engage. I encourage you to ensure that your voices are heard, that the education system is enhanced to meet everybody's needs.
In our cultural background.
Hi everyone, my name is Andrea Swindon and I apologize for not sharing my camera. I'm on a Mac device and for some reason it doesn't let me share my screen and my camera. So I'm just going to take a couple of minutes to go over the communications plan, which includes the timelines and then some next steps, and then we'll have an opportunity for some questions. So if you look at this, this graphic here, you will see that this project has been split up into 5 phases. We are currently in phase 1. It began on November 1st. And it will end on January 30th. And what we're calling this phase is the Coming Soon campaign. So what we want to accomplish during the next, and I guess now we have another couple of months left, is to raise awareness around what the student census is and why it is so important for parents, guardians, and students to respond to it, to complete it. So we are hoping we will provide over the next, over this 3-month period, we will provide the information that families need to be able to make the decision as to whether or not they will be submitting a response for the student census. So we do this in a variety of ways, including website updates. If you're following us on social media, you'll see that we have posts, and we will also be holding some info sessions, which I'll get to in a couple of slides. Phase 2 will be February. And at that point, we will be getting ready to launch the student census, and we will begin sending at that point direct emails to parents and students as well, secondary students, to share details about the student census, which will include the date that it opens and any information that they may need. And in those emails will be the opt-out information, which Dr. Collymore referenced when she spoke to the survey. Phase 3 is the launch itself. It's when the window is open between February 28th and April 4th. And at that point, we will be sending frequent reminders via email and on social media to ask parents and students to respond to the survey, to the census. And then what we have here, phase 4 and phase 5, right now they're tentative. And for a number of reasons that Dr. Collymore could probably expand on a little bit better than I can, but collecting this information and then collating it's going to take quite a bit of time, as you can see. So at this time we're hoping that the student census findings will be available to share in aggregate form with schools in December of 2022. And in January of 2023, if all goes well, then we're hoping that we'll be able to circulate the final student census report to our HCDSB community. So we're sharing this information in a variety of ways. We have some FAQs. There's a communications toolkit that schools have with some sample messages for the weekly updates. We've provided them images and social media posts, digital banners for D2L and Google, some videos in it. I should mention the video that you just watched is available and posted on our website in 3 additional languages, Spanish, Arabic, and Mandarin. But in addition, we are working on clipping them into more, it's a 5-minute video. It's difficult to share on social media. You need shorter versions. So we have 5 of them coming. We have 4 right now. There will be the 5th one coming this week to identify and highlight some of the students and parents in that video. Again, stressing why it's important, why we're doing this. Then this is just a sample of the promotional material you may have seen if you've been inside your child's school or inside your school if you're staff. In terms of next steps, you can mark your calendars right now. We don't have much more information other than we have 2 parent info sessions scheduled. One of them is for Thursday, January 13th between 7 p.m. and 8 p.m. And the other one is for Wednesday, February 9th between 7 p.m. and 8 p.m. We are toying with, we'll have more information as the time comes. We may be doing it live streamed, much like this meeting is, and certain info sessions have been, or we may actually have a live session where parents and students will be able to join on, much like this, on a Teams meeting, and it will be a little bit more interactive. We're still working through the details, and we will provide that as soon as we have more information. And at this point, it is open. The floor is open for questions.
Great. Thanks so much for the presentation to the 3 of you. Does anybody have any questions at all? Maria, go ahead.
Hello. I did have a few. So the first one is you talked about using a pilot process as part of the process, and I'm just wondering, is that a normal part of the research process in our board, and how often do you use pilot surveys before finalizing or launching a survey?
Hi, it's Dr. Collmore here, through you, Madam Chair. Do we say that here?
It's fine.
Thanks for the question. So, I mean, from a research perspective, yes, a pilot study is done to work out the kinks before you launch it with a larger sample. And we do typically do it for lots of projects. I wouldn't say we do it for every project, but for a lot of projects, there is a smaller sample that is used to sort of test out the measures, the process, to help the research department figure out what the analyses should look like. So when the time comes, everything hopefully goes off, perfectly.
Thank you. And another question, unrelated, but I'm just wondering if the census will allow us to identify how the demography of certain special education exceptionalities matches the demography of the general population, for example. I don't know if, will the questions allow for that, or is that something that can come later?
So the Equity Secretariat has provided a template of the questions to be asked on the student census. One of the questions, as Sita showed in her little slide, that little circle slide, is regarding disability. So the question is a 2-part question. We haven't finalized what our census survey will look like, but based on that template, it's a question that says, yes or no, do you consider yourself or your child a person with disabilities? It's a yes or no type question. And then if some person says yes to that question, there's the option to select all that apply. And there's a running list of disabilities there. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but that's the type of data that the census will give us.
Yeah, so I guess that's just a bit limited, because not all exceptionalities would be considered a disability. So I don't know if there's an opportunity to expand on that or to speak to exceptionalities specifically, but I know, again, I don't know how it looks in our board because we don't have the data, but we do know that in other regions, there are sometimes over and under representations of certain groups in certain exceptionality categories. So that's kind of what I was getting at. So
Pat has it. Sorry, Lisa, I just wanted Pat Daly, Director Daly has his hand up. Perhaps he was looking to answer that.
Well, Lisa could probably answer better.
Sorry.
But I think one of the things that, and Lisa will correct me if I'm wrong, One of the things we'll be able to do as we gather the data is to make those kind of cross references between the demographic data we have and data that already exists in the system. So we know who our students are identified by exceptionality already. So we will be able to make those sorts of comparisons a word, but maybe draw some of those correlations as we would with students who are studying at the academic level or the applied level or university or college. So it's pulling together all of that different data.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you. I did have sort of two other questions, but I don't know if there's someone ahead of me. I can go back in the queue.
I actually had a question. Do you mind, Maria? Okay, perfect. So I did have a question, and I did ask this, I know previously, but not for this group here. But I just wanted to ask what approach is being taken with respect to our students who require alternative communication. So whether they're using technology or a PEC system or anything like that. I'm just wondering how we're going to be able to accommodate their needs with respect to completing the census.
So I can answer that one again. It's Lisa. So we have, the research department has reached out to the Spec Ed department to discuss how this will look. And so we've definitely started having these conversations, and to my knowledge, the Spec Ed coordinator will connect with the people that need to be as helpful as possible when the time comes for the students that need that additional support. So we're still working out the actual logistics of what that will look like, but we have started that conversation.
That's great. Thanks so much. And just wanting to make sure that that every student that wants to participate will have the opportunity to do so and not be prevented at all by any accessibility barriers. So thanks for that.
No problem.
Maria, you had another question?
I did. I had two, and I'll hopefully they'll be quick. One of mine also was one that I also have asked at CPIC, but I thought that the information might be of interest here as well. And it was just in terms of, there's a comment in the video that historically our Indigenous students have not achieved. And I asked the question how we knew that, because we don't have the data for HCDSB. And if I can just say what the answer was, and Sita can jump in if I'm wrong, but we don't have that data for HCDSB, but that data has been collected, I guess, in other research, and that's what that comment is referring to. It's not specific to HCDSB. Sita, did I get that right?
Absolutely. Good evening. Yes. So there is lots of research looking at other boards, other areas, other provinces which speak to lower graduation rates, for example, for Indigenous students. So it speaks to those sort of, when we think about historically underserved communities and underserved students, Indigenous students are one that comes to mind. But of course, you're right, we don't have that data for our board, and this census will hopefully help us gather that data and be able to see are there any differences in outcomes for Indigenous students at Halton Catholic.
Thank you. And then my last question is another comment that's made in the video, and it's actually a comment that Director Daly makes, if I heard it correctly, that we're working towards equitable outcomes. So I just want to understand what's meant by equitable outcomes, because I feel like that's a pretty heavy expectation.
Can I take that one?
Yeah, it's for you.
Yeah, I think that, thanks for the question. Certainly the work that we're trying to do in equity work is not just to say we're giving everybody an equal chance. We want to look at what the actual outcomes are. So by being able to pull some of this demographic data, it may demonstrate to us that certain subsets of our students are not graduating, not applying to university, are scoring poorly on OSSLT, and then hopefully we can put a plan in place to mitigate or address what that gap might be. It's a big, yeah, you're right, Ms. Lorenko. It's a lofty goal, but I think it's a worthwhile one.
And I agree with everything you've said there. I think where the concern comes is some people interpret that as, everybody who wants to get into the neuroscience program at, at university ABC, you know, that's an equitable outcome that we can work towards. So I think that's where sometimes how it gets interpreted might be a little bit tricky, but certainly everything that you've shared in terms of your perspective on that, I think it is fair. So I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you, everyone. Is there any additional questions before we go on to our next presentation? No? Okay, thanks so much, everyone. I appreciate Dr. Collymore and Sita and Andrea for you being here, so thank you. Our next presentation is reading interventions, and we have Ashley Fliss and Karen McCarthy, special education consultants, who will be presenting on the tiered support. Sorry, everything is jumping up here. Who will be presenting on tiered support to reading interventions. So welcome and thank you for joining us.
Perfect, thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be presenting to you tonight on a topic that not only Karen and I are passionate about, but all of the special education consultants. So just a little background information on myself. My doctorate in special education is dedicated to learning disabilities, and specifically how early screening and intervention makes a difference for those who are at risk for reading challenges. So it's a pleasure for Karen, myself, and our special education department to share this learning and information with you tonight. So Karen, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Great, thank you, Ashley. And just to add on to what Ashley said, anytime we get to talk about children and special education is a great night. So thank you so much for having us here. We're very passionate about what we are going to present to you today. We are so lucky to have Ashley with us because she has her doctorate in this area. So she's been guiding us through this pilot project that Ashley will be sharing with you shortly. But it's just something, you know, reading is so universal and it's almost a human right today to be able to read. So we want to ensure that our children and our board have all the possibilities that they can to be as proficient as they can be in their reading. So we're just going to share with you tonight some of the interventions that we prescribe or that we suggest to our schools. There are many other ones, which I'll talk a little bit about shortly, but these are the ones that we know are evidence-based and have proven effective for struggling readers. Andrea, yeah, thanks. So you have this in your slide. We were told we have 20 minutes, so we're not going to spend a lot of time on this, but this is the tiered support for literacy and numeracy. Many of our areas in special education use this tiered intervention because it's something that's kind of a universal tiered model. So we are using this for literacy and numeracy. At the bottom, I'll just draw your attention, is the core instructional level. So this is what all teachers do in their classroom. It's basic good instruction for all children. And this is where, you know, tier 1 is where the whole class would lie and the teacher will target and deliver her program based on the needs of the children. Tier 2 is what I'll be speaking to, and that's the supplemental level. So after this teacher identifies students at risk, then there are different activities or instructions that other teachers, could be the classroom teacher, could be the special ed teacher, could be another teacher that's assigned to support programs to help students that are very targeted and direct. And the last tier is tier 3, and it is the most intensive. So as you move up the pyramid, you'll have more intensive instruction, and you should have less students. So if tier 1 is really effective, you're going to capture most of the kids. In tier 2, you might find 10 to 15% of a class that is struggling, and then tier 3 would be hopefully 5% of the population where you're really going to target intensively on reading support. Next slide, please.
So the first tier of support, otherwise known as the core instructional level, it happens within the classroom. So here teachers implement evidence-informed strategies when teaching reading skills. And teachers also engage in differentiated instruction when delivering their lessons in order to address the needs in their classroom. So next slide, please. An example of a Tier 1 reading support program is called Haggerty Phonemic Awareness Skills. And this supplement to regular literacy instruction includes specific lessons that are dedicated to the development of phonemic awareness skills. So our curriculum department has purchased this resource for every school, and currently all primary division teachers are receiving in-servicing on both the program itself and on ways to deliver it class-wide. So next slide, please. So we are very excited to be involved in a pilot project that has begun this year, and it involves a couple of elementary schools. And the goal is twofold: to determine the effectiveness of a reading screening tool that captures students who are demonstrating challenges with their reading skill development, and as well to determine the effectiveness of a reading resource that specifically targeted phonological awareness skills. So the appropriate categorization of whether or not we're going to be calling it Tier 1 or Tier 2 will be determined upon completion of the pilot project. Next slide, please.
Great. So I'm going to talk to you about Tier 2 support. So that's the middle of the pyramid. So it's about 10 to 15% of the population typically will land in Tier 2. So these students are identified by their classroom teacher. So the classroom teacher is doing continuous assessments to see how the students are progressing. And there are times when kids just are just shy of benchmark or struggling in their learning for reading. So what happens is then the teacher will usually bring those students forward at a school team meeting to say, like, I have a few students in my classroom, they're struggling. What can we do to support? So usually the school, typically, they have different interventions that they can offer to these students. Things to be aware, though, of this intervention, that it needs to be immediate. You can't wait. As soon as this teacher knows that there's, the student is just below benchmark, you need to act. You need to get these students on some kind of remediation program, and it needs to be targeted. You need to know, and teachers are getting very good at understanding exactly where they're faltering in their reading. Because if you don't target the right skill that they're lagging in, then it could be for nothing. It could be all for naught, and the student will get further behind. So that's part of our pilot. Is there are so many areas. I think when we did I was helping with the pre-testing, there's like 15 areas that students can falter in reading. So it's really important that the teacher and that the supplementary teacher that's helping with the tiered intervention understands exactly where the student is lagging behind. So I'm going to just share a few of the interventions that we use or suggest to schools. Next slide. So the first one is called Leveled Literacy Intervention. It's by Pearson, or it's called LLI, and it is an evidence-based program. And it's designed for students in grades 2 to 5 who are just slightly behind in reading and writing. We're just going to focus on reading today, but there is also a writing component in this program. It is intended for a small group of students. And as I said, it's supplementary and it's meant to be short term. So once the instructional levels of the students are determined, a small group gets created. And the hope is that these students are quickly brought up to grade level, usually within 14 to 18 weeks. So it is considered a short, direct intervention to help, sort of like a booster shot, to get kids back up to reading level. Now, this is different than, you may have heard of sunshine reading groups where educational assistants or parent volunteers teach or read with students before, during lunch, after school. This is provided by a teacher who's trained in this intervention. And the hope, as I mentioned, is that within that 14 weeks, they're at grade level. So it is a whole language based, it's a balanced literacy program. So it looks at whole language and phonics. So it's kind of a combination of both. And what the student does is they see reading modeled to them, they practice reading, and then they share reading. So it's not as phonetic based as some of the other two that I'm going to share in the next slides. So the next one that I'm going to share with you is called the Core 5 Lexia program. So it is, again, evidence-based, but it's a computer program. So it's not for all kids. Some kids who don't like to work on the computer, this wouldn't be recommended for them. And it does focus on phonological awareness, phonics, fluency, vocab, and comprehension. So it's really not as balanced as the LLI, it's more phonics based. So students take a brief placement activity, and then the program starts from where they're struggling. And they work on their own, for the most part, on this program. And teachers, though, have access to the progress, so they would check every couple days, or when the student starts to stall or starts to find it difficult, and then the stops the program and helps the student as required. It is designed to be a home and school program, so in order to make the gains that the program states it can, the students should be doing it 10 hours a week. So they do it at home for an hour a day, and then they do it at school. One thing I should mention about this tier, the supplemental level, that it needs to be taught over and above their core language. So typically kids get 90 minutes for language instruction. This needs to be done over and above those 90 minutes, because we know the evidence supports that kids need a lot of practice that are struggling. And so the 90 minutes is just the bottom line that they need, but they need at least another 40 minutes to an hour above that. So all these programs that I'm sharing with you are done over and above their regular language arts program. Next slide. The last one that I'm going to talk to you about is GATE. GATE, again, is an evidence-based program. It targets phonemic awareness, phonics, letter sounds. So you can see it's a phonics-based program as well as fluency and comprehension. So it is fairly prescriptive. The teacher has to go through prescriptive lessons, and they build on each other. And as the student becomes more proficient, they move up the level in GATE. So there's I think 4 different colors, starting from basics, sound segment, and then it goes into blending. So wherever the student's faltering, that's where you would start. So all these 3 are already packaged. So they come in a package, the CERT or the teacher or the intervention, whatever teacher is delivering this, can follow along the program. There are other programs that other schools may choose. For example, the Florida Reading Center is a website developed by the University of Florida. They have all these programs or all these activities that you would find in GATE, but the teacher would have to pick and choose them, make them, laminate them. So not all schools use this. I would say 90% of the schools use one or more, but there are other supplementary programs that teachers often use as well in conjunction with these programs. Not every program is designed for every student. It depends on where their needs are. For example, core, if the student isn't really in favor of online, or if the parent can't support it at home, that wouldn't be a recommendation for that student. So the school has to know the student, has to know where their difficulty in reading, and then determine what program is going to best meet their needs. Next slide.
So this tier involves increased intensity of support, either that there's more instructional time, smaller group size, or individual instruction. So in addition, there's a greater focus on teaching specific skills. So this tier should represent a smaller number, just like Karen said, of students in Tier 2 and in Tier 1. So next slide, please. So the Empower Reading Program is developed by Sick Kids Hospital, and this is an example of a Tier 3 level of reading support. Students who require this level of support are in a very small group and engage in daily lessons for 110 days. And usually this is led by a special education resource teacher who was specifically trained by a member of Sick Kids. The lessons target very specific skills regarding decoding, encoding, vocabulary, and have the students practice 5 strategies on a daily basis. And those strategies would be sounding out, rhyming, vowel alert, peeling off, and spy strategies. And that concludes our presentation.
Thank you so much. Is there any questions at all for our presenters tonight? Yeah, Dan, go ahead.
Hi, I think this was very interesting presentation because reading for somebody that can read is taken for granted, but the actual learning process is not as simple as it sounds. And I think there are a lot of studies and actually implementations of reading based on phonics, which had much better results for the whole population of kids in primary school, rather than just targeted segment. So my question was, if there were, I guess, implementation, I think in Mississippi, in US, and some other countries where they implement phonics-based reading skills, and they had much better results on the standard tests. Is there no, I guess, option for basing the reading on phonics for everybody, if that is proven to be more effective in reaching the targets, rather than starting with the regular stuff, then identifying kids that have difficulty, and then identify the program for them, and then put them in some kind of a phonics type of reading, which it's different than what they tried before. It might be more of a struggle.
Yeah, and you're right, Dan, and that's exactly what curriculum has done this year, is introduce the Haggerty program, which is phonics based. So, I mean, I'm from the old school where I got taught phonics and the pendulum has kind of swung back and forth. And now I think it's landing more in the middle where tier 1, which was the bottom, that all teachers have been taught how to teach phonics, and they will be expected to teach by next year. Many teachers are already doing it because they know that it works. For some, works for all kids, some better than others. Other kids might need a combination of phonics and maybe whole language instruction. So yes, you're right there, and our board has moved to that. I'm not in the curriculum side, so I can't speak to exactly what their pathway is, but all grade 1 teachers, I believe, has been in service on the phonics program, Haggerty, and they will be implementing that in school.
That's great, thank you.
I should also add that many of our teachers, so we trained, at least one teacher is trained in every school in Empower, and a couple of my teachers, and I have all the classes in Milton, are mildly intellectual students are also getting Empower from their teacher, and some of our students in our STC, which are developmentally delayed students, are also getting not the whole Empower program because it's a little bit intensive for them, but they're getting components of. So this is sort of transgressing to all, exceptionalities, and it's exciting to see how, they benefit from it.
Great, thank you.
Is there any other questions? No, doesn't look like it. Okay. Well, thanks again so much for being here. And everybody, if you have any questions after the fact, please feel free to share those and reach out to Ashley and Karen, and if you need any confirmation or any additional information. So thank you again so much for being here, you guys.
Thanks for having us. Night.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, take care. Okay. Okay, so we're moving on to item 4. So 4.1 is the approval of the minutes from our October 25th SEAC meeting. Did everybody have a chance to take a look at the minutes? Is there any questions or comments? Okay, could I get a mover to move the minutes?
This is Paul, I'll move.
Thanks, Paul. Is there anyone that can second that?
This is Rick, I'll second it.
Thanks, Rick. All right, moving on to item number 5, business arising from previous meetings. Andrea, are you able to bring up the chart by chance? Sorry. Okay, so there it is. Anybody have any questions or comments at all? on the business arising? No. Okay, perfect. Thanks, Andrea. So we are moving along to item number 6, which is the Special Education Board Policy Review section. Superintendent Ballo is going to speak to us about Policy II-20, Child Abuse and Protection of Students, which had been moved over from our last meeting. So Superintendent Ballo, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. Good evening, everybody. So we have Policy II-20, Child Abuse and Protection of Students. That's on the agenda this evening. Our board's chief social worker is directly involved in this policy, as is our Human Resources Department. The draft was shared in the package with SEAC with some edits that have already been made. It was on the agenda, as Brenda mentioned, at the November 9th policy meeting and will be going to board for approval on December 7th. It is a highly legislated policy, and the most significant changes to the policy include references that were added to update the reference list that we have. There's a reference there with regards to the electronic duty to report. We deleted the comment with regards to developing a procedure, as the procedure was established in 2004, so it's not relevant. And current expectations regarding the annual review was clarified as well. So I present the information to you. If there's any feedback from members, I would open that up.
Great, thanks so much. Is there any questions or comments at all with respect to this policy? Nope. Did everybody have a chance to take a look at it as part of the package? Yes, no. All right, that's great. Thank you so much, Superintendent Ballo. So this, we will be seeing this at the next policy meeting. Yeah, so thanks everybody for taking the time to review it. And thanks very much, Superintendent Ballo, for presenting it this evening.
No problem.
Okay, moving on to action and information items. So 7.1 is the SEAC goals, which were submitted, and everybody would have seen a copy of that in your meeting package. Andrea, do you happen to have that information available? I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time tonight toggling between everything on my computer. Okay, perfect. And so, as you know, a lot of work had been done on this, and Paul, thank you for taking the charge on this. And there's a document that was circulated so that people could provide feedback with respect to SEAC goals. We received initially some information and feedback. It wasn't a lot, so we did put it back out again, and we've subsequently received additional goals. So here they are. Everybody would have seen them in their board package. Happy to discuss if we want to go through them. We've got some time. I'd like to get some consensus on how people feel with respect to the goals that have been shared. So I do think it's important to chat about them. So why don't we just go through them? And if anybody has any comments or questions, please feel free to jump in. Or if something comes to you and you want to add to the goals, we can certainly do that as well. It's not too late to do that. So the first one we have here is to improve the effectiveness and participation at SEAC meetings. And I think that's a great, goal. I know that it's been difficult with respect to being virtual. I think we're all getting sort of Zoom fatigue. I know that we did have a lot more robust conversations when we were in person around the table. So hopefully we will return to that at some point so that we can get back face to face. But if anybody does have, any suggestions at any point on how we can increase the participation, or if there's something that you believe we should be doing to improve effectiveness, I do think that's a great goal. Increase awareness and exposure of SEAC to parents and the board. again, I think top of mind, we're always looking for ways to increase parent engagement and to increase what it is that SEAC does, who we are, how we can assist in the role that we play. As a community representative, probably the system parent survey would be the most appropriate. As a growing board, it would give us an update on the needs of our students and their parents. From this vantage point, we can best organize and prepare our focus. Okay. Another comment about sorry, Paul, yep, go ahead.
I just did some quick research or online checking whether other boards have done a parent survey. And it seems like there's 3 or 4 examples out there already that would make it fairly easy to adopt and move forward on. So I just thought I'd throw that out.
Okay, great, thank you. And I think what we'll need to do, obviously, is when we go through these goals is determine how it is that we would like to incorporate these into, obviously our planning and, what, again, is this subcommittee work? Is this, what is it? So keep that in mind as well as we go through those. But thank you for that research, Paul. Maybe if you do have some samples, you can keep those handy. Should we go that route? That'd be great. I think a really important goal is for SEAC to build an awareness of the various needs and gaps throughout the whole system from the perspective of parents and students. We have to recognize that not all of our stakeholders have a voice through SEAC for a variety of reasons. This may be best achieved conducting a comprehensive survey, spec ed families. Okay, so another comment on a survey. I have heard about PAC on SEAC and that they have recommendations for SEAC. I think a good goal would be to outline their recommendations for SEAC and bring them to SEAC for discussion and adopt some of the recommendations that would help us and help our students. Sure, yeah, we could definitely put something on the agenda with respect to PAC on SEAC. We have discussed some of the recommendations previously, but we could certainly put that on and have a more fulsome discussion on that and see what recommendations we feel that we may want to take a look at implementing. Another comment for surveys, self-assessment process on SEAC meetings to measure effectiveness of the meetings, consider results of PAC SEAC survey, action input provided by SEAC members in the past, which unfortunately wasn't shared with members. How are we supposed to get better if feedback isn't fully shared? Okay. So I'm just making notes, sorry, bear with me. I recently learned that there was a review scheduled to be completed on PPM 81, Inter-Ministerial guidelines for SLP services. I've reached out to my affiliated association about this, but was wondering if this could be an opportunity for SEAC to write a letter requesting that the 3 ministries involved look at the unification of SLP services. They're currently divided between CTCs and the school board, and there is a long wait list of the CTCs for those requiring support. It also appears that Aranoak has stopped the preschool speech and language program at JK, no longer SK, which is concerning if there was no adjustment to the funding our HCDSB receives. I'm not sure if this is out of our scope. However, I wanted to mention it in case this was something we can do. So I definitely don't think that that's out of our scope. Is Denise still on the line? By chance?
I sure am.
Hey, Denise. I'm wondering if you could speak to this, and I see Rhonda's hand up as well, but if you could lend any insight into this, point.
Yeah, so the boards were emailed, I think about a month ago from all 3 ministries involved in schoolhouse support services about a couple of things, but one thing they specifically spoke to was opening up PPM 81 and the Inter-Ministerial guidelines and looking at possibilities for unification of speech and language services for school-age children. Which we're very excited about. And I know that there's an association of chief SLPs in education in Ontario that's looking at how they can support stakeholders like the OAF-CCD and various SEACs around giving some of their feedback to the ministry. So if this is something SEAC is interested in looking into, I'm happy to put together some information for you to consider from the chief SLPs and sort of some of the work that they're doing and what OSLA is doing as well, the Ontario Speech and Language Association.
That'd be great, actually. I mean, if it's not too much work for you, Denise, if you could provide some of that information, I think that would be helpful.
Not at all. I've been waiting 20 years for this to happen since I've started being an SLP, and the whole profession is super excited about this possibility. So anything we can do to support, we will happily do.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Rhonda, you had your hand up as well. Did you want to go ahead?
That was my understanding. I was going to say exactly what Denise was saying, yeah, because as you know, I work for the infant hearing program, and that's been a really big concern for our families going into school, that services are stopped after such a short period. And what child at the age of 4 or 5 is ready for therapy at 4 o'clock at night, right? So yeah, I'm happy to hear that things are being negotiated further. It's great.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah, so that does sound like something that would be within our scope that we could go ahead and support. So is that the end of them, Andrea? Sorry, I think it is, right? Yep. So I'm opening up the floor. Obviously, we just discussed this one here, but thank you, Andrea. I'm opening up the floor because again, these are the goals that have been shared. I don't know if anybody has any goals they would like to add to this. We could certainly do that at this time. And if not, then maybe some conversation around prioritizing these and how we want to go about, implementing some of these. Is everybody on side with doing this? I welcome your thoughts. Yep, go ahead, Maria.
I just try to understand the process, or maybe we're still trying to figure that out, because we did have also a goals subcommittee set up. So are we wanting to decide here today, or is the subcommittee going to take the feedback back and then come back, or just trying to understand all of that?
Yeah. And Paul, I see your hand up as well. I mean, I think what I'm trying to do, Maria, here is just start some conversation. What is the best way? So yes, I know we do have a goals subcommittee, and that's great. I was hoping that we could get some feedback for that subcommittee, if people had ideas or if they had information that they wanted to provide for that subcommittee to consider. Again, I mean, these are goals that have been put forth. Are they shared by everybody? Are we missing something? Is there something here that somebody doesn't think that they want to see happen? I mean, this is going to be your time, your goals as a SEAC committee. So that's where I'm really looking for some feedback. And then certainly we would be looking to the subcommittee to work on some recommendations and bringing those forward for sure. Just trying to make your job a little bit easier, if you will.
Okay, yeah.
By engaging some of the other members.
Sure.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. I just trying to kind of get my head around it. That's all.
Yeah, for sure. And I think because it's a new process for us as well, it's probably helpful to talk through it a little bit. Paul, you had your hand up as well.
I was just about, Brenda, sorry, Madam Chair, I was just about to go through the exact same comments you made, that it'd be great to get more feedback. The subcommittee, I'd like to see if we could turn this into goals and objectives. Some of the comments, they're more objectives. And every goal that we have, we should have 2 or 3 objectives so we can measure how we're doing. And I would hope that the subcommittee would take this feedback and the other feedback and come back to the committee and say, here's what we think the goals are, and here's the objectives, and get everyone to agree to those.
Right. Okay. Okay, so does anybody have any comments they would like to make on these goals? We do have a goals subcommittee. You would have seen the subcommittees. I know I'm rolling these 2 into one, but we may as well talk about them all at once. You would have seen listed in your board package these subcommittees and who is on those subcommittees. And so for the goals, I believe, Paul, it's yourself and Maria. Am I missing someone on that?
I think we got one addition.
Oh, good.
I volunteered late.
I see.
I saw that there wasn't a lot of volunteers.
So that's good. I was hoping we'd have a bit of a more robust group, just because, obviously it makes lighter work with more hands. So that's great to see. So as we're discussing these goals, then, does anybody on this subcommittee, do you have any questions for our members? Is there anything that you'd like to get from them information-wise before you start or continue your conversations as you move this forward?
Sorry, can I just jump in, Brenda? Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it would be great to hear from everyone what they think of the goals that have been presented, and if there's a priority, because I think, if it doesn't reflect the will of the committee, then I don't know how successful we're going to be in the end. So I can certainly say what I think my priority is I submitted one. You know, I'm on the committee, so I'll have that opportunity, but it would be, you know, whether it's here tonight or whether it's by email or whatever, it would be nice to sort of hear what other people's priorities are for the work of our group.
Would it be helpful at all if we were to put out, I know in the past we've done a form that we've sent out where people list the, you know, they sort of prioritize the goals. I don't know if that would be of value. I mean, we don't have a ton there, but if we are looking at, you know, time and energy, we could potentially look at sending that out and having our members prioritize what goals they may want to see focused on first, if you will. I don't know if that would be helpful for you guys as you're doing your work. If it is, just let us know.
I think that would be very helpful. Sorry,
Okay.
it's Liesl speaking.
That's okay, Liesl. Okay. Okay. And I think, you know, again, perhaps maybe as a subcommittee, you know, come together and, you know, identify the things that you need to get from our members, as you had sort of said there, Maria, and you know, maybe identify what we as a group could be providing, what kind of feedback you're looking for, what kind of information you're looking for, so that you can do your work and move forward. You know, I think it's really excellent that we do have this subcommittee for goals that can take this and run with it. So we should maximize that opportunity. So again, you know, this is your committee. This is SEAC. It's not my committee. It's not anybody's individual committee. It is our group. And we all want to work really hard to make sure that we are representing the voices of everybody and trying to be reflective of what it is that people want to get out of this committee. So if we don't hear from you, then, you know, unfortunately we have to assume, and I you know what they say about assuming. So what we can do then, Lisa, is why don't I'll speak with Andrea, and if it's helpful for you guys, we could put together some sort of form to help you prioritize those and send that out to the members and see what the feedback is like. And then anything else that you feel that you need to get going or to help your discussions, please let us know.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Okay. Paula, Maria, anything else that you want to add, Stephanie, to that?
Oh, I think that sounds good, Brenda.
Okay, great, thanks. Paul, go ahead.
I agree. I was just wondering whether it's best to have the subcommittee get together for one meeting and sort of organize it in a way, make some of those goals, some of our objectives, and flesh something out, and then send it out to everybody for feedback.
Sounds great. If that's the route you want to go, that's great. Just let us know what you need from us from a participation perspective. Okay, so that's our goal conversation. Again, it's not too late. I know that they're there, and we did give a timeline because obviously the committee needs that to start their work. But if you do have a goal that comes to mind, please share it with the committee so that they can make sure that they know that that is a goal for you that you want to work towards. We have listed here as well the other committees, so thank you for those of you who have signed up for a committee. We have the SEAC Spirit of Inclusion, and our members are listed there. That hasn't happened yet. The SEAC Guidelines and Code of Conduct Subcommittee, we've already had a meeting. It was a great meeting. We are off and running and should have a draft ready by next week to get to SEAC to take a look at before our meeting. And then our SEAC Goals Subcommittee that we just discussed. Is there any questions at all about any of those committees before I move on to our board committee updates? Nope. Okay. All right. So moving on to item number 8, the board committee updates from SEAC representatives. So if we want to go ahead and ask each member for a brief update if they have one. So the Mental Health and Wellbeing Advisory Steering Committee, myself and Diane Rabenda are on that committee. Diane, did you want to provide an update at all?
Sure, Brenda, that would be fine. We had our first meeting a couple of weeks ago, and looking very much at mental health and addictions, human rights, the equity roadmap, community partnerships. we will be having another 2 meetings in this current school year. The last one we had last week in November, and we have another one in March and in June. And an issue that is of great concern at this time, of course, is the stress, the mental health out of many issues, but certainly out of the COVID issue. The staff is seeing an increase in referrals and consultations that are needed this year. They try to get to the kids and their parents as soon as possible. And there is no waiting list because they can't be with something so critical. And I'm just wondering if as we go through the year, excuse me, we have to keep an eye on whether or not this is becoming a real need, more of a need, I should say, in the board, and where that comes into play when we are looking at the SEAC input towards the board budget as to whether or not we need to look at staff increasing in that area. So just a little something to keep in mind. Thanks, Brenda.
Great. Thanks so much, Diane. Was there any questions for Diane at all on that update? No? Okay, great. Thanks again, Diane. So moving to the de-streaming committee, Maria, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. So we had one meeting in September, and we got updates from the math subject councils and about professional development. As most of you probably know, the curriculum for the new de-streamed math didn't come out until June, I believe it was. And even in September, there were some gaps in what was available, including vague expectations. The teachers have been leaning on open-ended tasks and what they call low floor, high ceiling, which will mean more to educators than to me, but and the teachers are being provided with release time to collaborate with each other as well as elementary teachers. A couple of questions that I asked that I think would be of interest to SEAC. One was regarding class sizes. In the past, applied classes were smaller than academic. So the board has balanced the de-streamed classes are sort of an in-between, and that was a board decision, not a ministry directive. There are not additional resources for our spec ed students under the de-streamed model, but they continue to be supported as before through their certs and by their classroom teachers implementing IEP accommodations. The committee has established 3 subcommittees focused on 3 different goals. They're kind of long, but I'll just shorten them. The first one is regarding cultural shifts to identify and dismantle systemic discrimination and structural inequities. Second one around increased educator capacity, and the third one, increased student engagement, achievement, and well-being. Since our meeting, the ministry, as you probably know, has announced an expansion of de-streaming to basically all of grade 9. So the board, it will be completing a survey of grade 9 math teachers who just finished the teaching the grade 9 de-streamed math in quad 1. And the committee will reconvene again sometime before Christmas. And if anyone has any questions that they would like me to bring forth to the committee or any feedback to provide to the committee, please reach out to me at any time with that. And that's it.
Great, thanks, Maria. Is there any questions at all for Maria? Director Dilly, I see you have your hand up. Do you want to go ahead?
Thanks, thanks, Brenda. And it wasn't really a question, just to note the question that Ms. Lorenko asked about class sizes. That's a kind of an ongoing concern as well, with more of our classes being de-streamed. So it has been raised by school board chairs with the Minister of Education, and it's been raised with the ministry by directors of education, but without much response as of yet. So that's a kind of something that's on our radar as well.
Great, thank you so much. So moving on to Equity Committee, the Equity Audit Committee, that is me. So we did have a great committee, and we've been doing a lot of work. We did get together to put together the terms of reference and the criteria for an RFP to go out. And unfortunately, the RFP, for different reasons, was not a, it was a no-go, if you will. we didn't get a lot of respondents, and the ones that we did get, unfortunately, just didn't have the experience that we were looking for. Our sense is that there's not a lot of companies that do this kind of work, and the ones that do this kind of work are currently tied up with other projects. So we have had a discussion as a committee to take a look at changing our timelines a little bit so that we can perhaps free up some time if there are going to be some providers who just need a little bit of a longer time frame, because our turnaround was quite quick. And we are going to be looking for some contenders. So that's where we sit right now, and hopefully we'll have another update for you soon as to where we get with that.
Sorry,
Equity.
Brenda. Sorry, Madam Chair. Yeah. I don't have a hand to put up. I apologize.
No worries, Lisa.
What is an RFP, just for my knowledge?
So sorry, an RFP is a request for proposal.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Sorry, the acronyms are out of control sometimes. So thank you for that reminder that I do need to be a little bit more explicit at times. The Equity and Inclusion Committee. So let me pull up my notes from that. That is a very robust committee. We have a number of people that participate on that committee, including administration. We've got students, we've got trustees, we have representation from various committees. We have mental health. So it's a really robust committee. Our last meeting, we talked a few different areas. We talked about human rights and equity. There was some revisions to the equity and inclusive education policy that were highlighted. We spoke about resources that have been developed for elementary students to learn about human rights and equity, and then what resources are being used for secondary students in the process, are also in the process of being finalized. We had some equity updates. So we had sharing from all of our members to capture some of the ongoing initiatives in schools and to look at some new suggestions for expanding the work of equity. So we had updates about the work that's being done to engage teachers in better understanding the teaching of the church with respect to equity. Also working on resources to reflect inclusive language in French with reference to pronouns. We had some updates with respect to student-led equity groups, our GSAs, and efforts to engage Black youth in collaboration with the CYCs. Secondary library staff are continuing to strengthen libraries by expanding collections, engaging and learning in the context of the CRRP project. Just going through a few more things here. There was a really good point that was brought up by one of our principals in secondary who has noted that the work of equity is being embedded in almost every committee at their school, with the first question being who is missing, whose voices need to be included, which is fantastic. So we talked about that as being a starting point for the work that we're doing. It is wonderful. We talked about the census. So the census project learnings and the video were shared, as was this evening. Everybody's really, really excited about sharing that with the networks and the student groups so that we can encourage wide participation in the survey. And there was some suggestions for parents who don't have access to the internet, additional methods of communication to be looked at. And some of the next steps are putting together our learning goals, identifying and sharing any specific learning goals that the committee can support. Just trying to see what else here. Connecting with our elementary and secondary students, working with Student Senate to explore how to bridge the gap and divide between secondary and elementary. And I think that is it for most of my notes. And our next meeting is February the 10th, 2022. So again, if you have any questions or if there's anything that you ever want me to bring forward to this committee, please let me know. As I said, it's a very robust committee and we talk about quite a bit. So happy to bring any of your suggestions or questions forward at my next meeting. Moving on to 8.5, we have STEAM committee with Nancy and Maria.
I can give an update, Brenda. Very brief one.
Sure.
We haven't actually met, but I did reach out to Superintendent Crowell because I wasn't sure if I just was missed or what was happening. So the committee hasn't met, but I guess they've hired a STEAM consultant and 4 itinerants, and they're currently working on implementing the plan and looking to have a meeting in January to review the terms of reference for the steering committee and revise them as needed and set future meeting dates. So there will be a STEAM presentation to the board in the new year, and then in presentations to CPIC and SEAC if there's interest. So share that with SEAC, and hopefully I'll have an update in January.
Great, thanks, Maria. And yeah, I think that would be great. I know personally I'd love to see a presentation at SEAC. I think it's such an amazing initiative, and I'm really excited to see how we'll be looking to provide inclusive opportunities and remove any possible barriers for participation that there might be. So yeah, if that's something that we can bring to SEAC, I think that would be fantastic. So those are, sorry, Maria, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say again, and again, similar to the de-streaming, if there's any other feedback or questions that members would like me to bring forth, please feel free to reach out at any time.
Okay, great. Thanks everybody for the updates and for your work on the committees. I think it's so incredibly important to have the voice of SEAC on these board-wide committees, and just really grateful for your time on those committees. So thank you for that. Moving on to item 9.1, we have the superintendent report. So Superintendent Ballo, it is all yours.
Thank you so much. So we're going to start with an update regarding International Day of Persons with Disabilities. It takes place each year on December 3rd and is set aside to increase knowledge and understanding. Our board is recognizing International Day with activities throughout this entire week starting today, which is great. The international theme for this year is leadership and participation of persons with disabilities towards an inclusive, accessible, and sustainable post-COVID-19 world. A resource kit has been prepared and shared with schools with activities, prayers, and videos that can be used throughout this week to celebrate the day. The resources this year include a focus on student voice and reflect the ways that students and staff with disabilities are leaders in our school communities. A presentation has been prepared with a variety of students across the system, sharing how they are leaders in their schools, and we're hoping to share that with SEAC in December. With regards to professional development, we have had a very busy November. At the November 23rd Secondary Special Education Department Head meeting, our Chief Social Worker, Jane Atchison, and one of our secondary social workers presented to the department heads on the role of the social worker in secondary schools, including a review of the referral process. We're really trying to collaborate as a department at large, always building capacity for all of our staff about how they can best access resources. Last year, we started Self and Match training. The Self and Match system is a self-monitoring and motivational system that is grounded in the principles of ABA. Self and Match encourages a collaborative approach to promoting systemic behavioral success for children and young adults by using self-monitoring with a match component. We're continuing this year with beginner, intermediate, and advanced sessions being offered for our certs and our sets. This year as well, the Special Education Department is thrilled to relaunch the most recent installment of ABA for All. It's called our ABA Bonanza 2.0, with funds provided by the Ministry for ABA Professional Development. ABA Bonanza 2.0 represents the amazing collaboration again between our special education disciplines within the board. There are a variety of robust modules that are designed to leave participants with an understanding of the many applications of ABA and how it can benefit all learners in all classrooms. Modules are included from our CYCs, our social workers, our psych staff, our I-teams, SLPs, and behavior analysts. There are also live virtual panel discussions that will be taking place whereby our HCDSB staff will be able to connect directly with the presenters and engage in dialogue around the modules they have previously viewed. So we've already launched the ABA, and it continues to be an accessible resource for all staff. The Tier 1 infographic provided to all schools on literacy, numeracy, and behavior was developed over the summer. It started with our summer working groups. The Tier 1 infographic was created by our department and shared with administrators in August and our CERTs at the September Family of Schools meeting. A large vertical banner poster was created for all schools to post in a designated area in their school. In collaboration with curriculum partners, it outlines evidence-based, effective classroom instruction at the Tier 1 level in the area of literacy, numeracy, and behaviors. With the assistance of our behavior analysts, it identifies strategies, resources, and assessment tools to support student success. We also had a recent training from ROC regarding Level 1 dual diagnosis for our CERTs, consultants, social workers, psychology staff, and behavior analysts. It informs school staff and community partners who were both in attendance about students with special education needs and co-occurring diagnoses, including common mental health needs and the importance of supporting both. The November Family of Schools agenda also included some collaboration with ESL and special education. Elementary math curriculum presentations were also part of the agenda. At the November 27th new CERT meeting, a number of topics were included to provide, again, that training and capacity building for our new staff. From referral to identification presentation by the psychology department, IPRCs, how to effectively participate in school student success meetings, a review of online resources for students with special education needs, IRPs and safety plans, and the role of an educator and EA team. An FASD presentation took place recently as part of our special topics in our FASD series, which has been a big focus for us this year. Considerations for IEPs for students with FASD was provided by our itinerants and with the support of Denise Colley. And it was a greatly attended session. Our SLPs and CDAs completed a pilot of a new Tier 1 program on storytelling to promote narrative language development, and the program is to be offered in Term 2 as well. With regards to mental health and well-being, we do have a new interim chief, Michael Siema. He started with us November 1st, actually. You may or may not know that Glenda Brown, who is our Chief of Mental Health, she is off and she should be coming back to us in January. So we are very happy to have Michael join our team for 2 months. I believe he is in the meeting. Maybe he might want to say hello, but.
Hello.
Hi, Michael.
Hello.
Hey, Michael.
I know this is my first time on, and it's a great privilege being here, and I'm hoping to get to know you guys.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been great having Michael be part of our team. I know it's a huge learning curve, and he brings a lot to the discussions. He was a lead in our mental health advisory meeting that we recently had, and we really appreciate that. Our first mental health advisory meeting was mentioned earlier. It did take place in November. Focus for the group will be to review and update the mental health and addiction strategy this year. And we do have a plan and an invitation out to members of the advisory, including our student trustees, to support the update of that plan. National Bullying Awareness Week was recognized in November. Resources were provided to schools by the CYCs, including faith-based announcements, as well as prayers that help support the positive message of inclusion, as well as our theme of restore, rebuild, and renew. The resources have been shared by CYCs for secondary GLE classrooms as well. The SNAP program, Stop Now Plan, training for CYCs, continued with the implementation of the program across the system. You may recall that we started last year with about 10 schools. Now we have another 10. And we're working toward having the program in all of our schools. Mind Up Training is a popular program. It's currently offered in 21 of our elementary schools, and we are working on a pilot with our secondary students. And Michael's been part of that work with the itinerant CYCs to get the pilot up and running at the secondary level. We will be focusing initially on our GLE classes, Alt Ed, and our life skills classes. So we're looking forward to bringing back some updates once we work through our pilot. I would just add that our social workers are continuing their work with students and families on their caseloads with regards to mental health, attendance, school engagement, and stress, which Diane had mentioned earlier. Stress management. Consultation support is ongoing with our administrators and our school staff, and everyone is very committed to that work. Our Safe Talk, which is suicide prevention training, has taken place for all of our new CYCs, as well as CYCs that needed some refresher training, and that training took place in October and November, and we'll continue to offer Safe Talk training over the course of the year. And then lastly, our mental health resources. We do have a working group who are actively working on creating resources as well as pulling very effective resources from School Mental Health Ontario. And they're sharing those resources with both secondary and elementary schools. The elementary package that went out recently was with regards to supporting mental healthy schools and classrooms. The focus is on stress and anxiety. And then at secondary, the focus of the resource is around stress management and coping distraction strategy. And that's the report. The last item that I will mention is with regards to the psych assessment wait times. We typically do present them in November. And the update that I have is that our wait times are on average at this point between 11 and 13 months. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. I know it was a lot.
That was a mouthful, but thank you so much. A lot of fantastic updates, a lot of stuff going on as usual. Does anybody have any questions at all for Superintendent Ballo? Maria, go ahead.
One quick one. You mentioned the wait times are between 11 and 13 months, and I just don't remember how that compares to the last time we got a report.
I have Oliver on. I'd have to double check the number. I wouldn't want to misrepresent the information, but I think it was typically around that same time, but I can confirm and let you know.
Okay.
I can just go back to my May notes.
There's Oliver. Do you want to go ahead?
Sure. Thank you. It is a little bit of an increase. We're down to 9 months at some point, but we do have a vacancy rate of about 25% in our staff. And in order to address the increased wait time, as we learned a new word today, RFP, we have sent out an RFP and are contracting hopefully in January to fill in through some contract assessments.
Great. Thanks so much, Oliver. Thanks for being here. Maria, did you have a follow-up?
No, I didn't.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, was there any other questions for Superintendent Ballo?
I have a quick question. It's Liesl.
Yeah, of course, Liesl.
I was just wondering, ABA for All, I haven't heard of that before. So is it, it sounds like it's learning modules regarding ABA and how to implement it for students?
Yeah, it is actually. And I also have Jody on the line, who's a lead with the ABA Bonanza, and I'm sure she'd be happy to provide some more information. She just likes saying the word bonanza as much as she can.
It is a fun word.
It is.
That's a Wendy word, but it's a great word, that's for sure. So through you, Madam Chair, yes, ABA Bonanza, it is using the strategies of ABA to support our students. And we started this a number of years ago with ABA for All and that idea that these strategies can support all students. And it can also be used within our special education department through all disciplines. So we have a number of video modules that are offered to our staff through the OLS, which is the online learning system. And if any staff can register for the special education module, and there are permanent products from all of our disciplines, as Stephanie mentioned previously, from CYC, social workers, and it's all related to how the strategies of ABA are used to support our students.
That's awesome. Is there time carved out for staff? It sounds like it's, is there time like carved out for staff to complete, or is it really just based on the interest of the staff?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually, and something we had to tackle with COVID, as you can imagine, COVID fatigue, and there's a lot going on. But we were able to, and very happy to be able to provide supplies to each of the schools to use as they see fit. So they might have tried to get a couple of supplies in one day, or use it over course of days to release teachers to view a number of the modules. And some of the modules are really short. Some of them are 15 minutes. Some are 30 minutes, so they're short modules. So the supplies can be used to release teachers, a number of teachers throughout the day. And then as well as attend the video sessions as well, which is the panel presentations by the presenters. And we offered them at times that they might be able to either be released by supply, or we also provided some after school times, just in the case that, because we can't have supply release for everyone, but we did our best to use the money to support teachers to be able to view those modules.
That's awesome. One last question. I hear teachers being mentioned, but are these modules open for EAs as well?
Lisa, you're asking these great questions. Sorry, I'm not getting there in time. These are great questions. It's for all staff. So absolutely, EAs, DCEs, CYCs, anyone can view them. The supplies are for any staff that require supply. So our certs, they're viewing these modules. We actually just presented to our occasional teachers some of these modules, because there's some great presentations there that would be helpful for our occasional teachers. So we're really trying to get to as many staff as possible. So those that require supplies, the supply money can be used for them. Yeah, great question.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Jody.
No problem.
Thanks, Lisa. I miss the in-person bonanzas.
I know, that was fun. It
was fun. It was. I mean, I think it's fantastic that we are obviously, being able to do these and continue them, even if it's in a different fashion. But it was just so impactful to go to the schools and see the people that were interested in the bonanza, like the people that were coming down to learn about it and to see how the tools were being used. And it was just really, I miss them. Maybe next year.
Yeah. Next year. And I will add that you can follow on Twitter. We do hashtag and do all of that work as well. So yeah, maybe next year.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Yeah. Well, thanks for all of your good work. And if anybody has any additional questions on the ABA Bonanza, please feel free to reach out and we can give you some more information. Thanks, Jody. Okay, up next we have Marvin. We have Trustee Dort with the trustee update.
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Chair. I can see that. Since the last SEAC meeting, I think it was on October 25th, trustees had two board meetings. The first meeting on November 2nd and the other on November 16th. At the November 2nd board meeting, there was one action item relating to North Oakville number 4 Catholic Elementary Secondary Boundary Review Committee, which was approved. At the November 16th board meeting, there were two delegations. One was disparity in minority representation within the HCDSB teaching staff. This was a delegation regarding representation within HCDSB teaching staff. The response to the delegation was a request for a staff report to be brought to the board no later than December 21st. And the second delegation was secondary assessment through an equity exam assessment through an equity lens. The delegation regarding secondary assessments was presented, and the response to that delegation was to accept it as information. Some other notable action items that were discussed and approved was the draft audited financial statements, the Milton Catholic Secondary Boundary Review to accommodate French immersion expansion, Milton number 10 Catholic Elementary School Boundary Review, and the proposed 2020 facilities renewal projects. All these action items were approved. There was an action item on a notice of motion on secondary exam feedback. Basically, in short, this was a staff report. There was a staff report on secondary exams. The report came to the board. The request was to send that report and the motion to all school councils for feedback regarding expectations for examinations in grade 9, 10, 11, and 12 for the next school year. for this school year, 21-22. The report was to be brought back for the second board meeting in January 2022. Based on the feedback received, the staff report is to be brought to the Board of Trustees with a finalized plan for teaching exam writing skills to high school students in Feb 2022, and this passed. A couple of policies were brought to the board and which were approved. Some of them were smoking vaping ban policy, the alcohol, tobacco vaping, and drug education and abuse in school, and the child care facilities. So these are the couple of things that trustees have been doing over the past month, and I will take any questions if there are.
Thank you, Trustee Dort. Is there any questions at all? No, looks like it's all good. Thanks very much for the report.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item number 10.1. Item number 10, SEAC discussion, item and questions, 10.1, expansion of elementary community classroom staff report. Oh, sorry, my camera's not on, not intentional. From the October 19th board meeting. You would have seen this report in your package. We did have this on the last meeting and we're bringing it forward to this one so that members of the committee had time to review the report. Here it is. Thanks so much, Andrea. Was there any questions that anybody had with respect to the report? At this point, it's just a report to get an idea on what our current landscape looks like for our community living classrooms and what it would look like should we look to expand those classrooms to offer more opportunities for students with those placement options. And so staff came back with some suggested locations, some costs, and just some additional information on the CLC classrooms. So was there any questions or comments at all on that? Yeah, Maria?
I did have a couple of questions, and I did listen to the discussions that happened at the board table. One of the issues was very confusing to me in the way the discussion happened and what was shared. And I don't know if it was the way that it was explained or my misunderstanding. So I was hoping to get some clarification. And I don't know if Aaron Lofts is on the call. I think are in our meeting here. Or if there's someone else that can answer this, but it just had to do with the funding for transportation or even any specialty programs. And it seemed to be explained that the board would get additional funding to provide transportation to a specialty program like this, which was not my understanding of how transportation or even spec ed is funded. My understanding of spec ed funding is it's based on enrollment data, and transportation is a little bit less clear as to how it's funded, but I didn't think that additional funding was provided. So I just wanted to get clarity on that for the sake of everybody, because I think it was a bit confusing even at the board table. So I don't know if there's anyone here that can answer that question or if it can be taken away.
I'm just trying to see. I don't see Superintendent Lofts on the call.
I see him listed, but I can't tell if it means he's here or not.
But Superintendent Ballo has her hand up. Do you want to go ahead?
I was just going to clarify that Superintendent Lofts was invited and he should be on the call.
Maybe I'm dismissing him too quickly.
I don't see him as listed as a participant who's active in the call right now.
So we can take that back, Maria, and then come back with a response.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful because it's I remember hearing, from actually through ABC that, yeah, if you have a program and the board provides transportation, you get extra funding. But then when I looked into it, I can't find anywhere where it actually says that. So, and then the conversation was, again, like I said, was a bit, so that clarity would be helpful, not just for this, but just in general for everybody to understand. I would find that helpful to understand. So we could take that away. The other question I had, so I understand from listening to the board meetings, there isn't currently a wait list for this class. And I'm just wondering historically if there has been wait list or just, you know, students who have been denied this classroom because there isn't space. I know the capacity is set by the regulation. And if I understand correctly, at one point there was 2 locations because St. Gabriel was open until 2008, but Oakville opened in 2003. So it sounded like at one time did we have demand for 2 locations, but then St. Gabe's closed due to lack of enrollment. I'm just wondering historically how it has looked, like whether there's been students denied, what those numbers kind of look like, if we've had wait lists, have we always been full at 6? Just trying to get kind of an understanding of that.
Superintendent Ballo, do you want to take that?
Sure, I can do that.
Sure, thanks.
So as is noted in the report, the CLC did start at St. Gabe's in Burlington, and it collapsed due to low enrollment in around 2008. It's interesting when you have so many changes in staff over the years as well, how complicated it gets to find out some information. The CLC in Oakville began at St. James in 2003, and then it moved to the current location at St. Teresa of Calcutta in 2018. There is a capacity of 6 students in that class, and the class typically is filled at 6. There's quite a bit of movement, I would also say, even though there are only 6 students in that class, just because, you know, life happens and sometimes people move in and out of classes. They may move in and out of the area. They may determine that they want the class and then reconsider and determine, or vice versa. It really is a journey that parents are on, and it just needs to be the right time and the right fit for families. And I think that our consultants do a really good job of working with the school administration, the CERT team, parents, to explore options outside of the school if that's something that they are looking for. It is very common that even if we have students who are suitable for the program, it's very common for parents to wish to remain in their home school, whether it's, you know, location, distance, time on a bus. They, you know, have an attachment to their home school. So it may sound like, how do we make it work? But typically, you know, pretty consistently, parents do want to remain at their home school. And when they show an interest in a self-contained class, we certainly work with the school team to see if it's the right fit for the student, because we do offer a variety of different classes. So the CLC may not, you know, is very prescribed. We typically have students who are medically fragile in those classes. Currently, we do have students who are in the class, and we've looked ahead, and we did include some of that information in our report to see who would be returning from the current 6 that are at the Oakville site. And we do have students who graduate as well, so the numbers do fluctuate with regards to that. Looking at the students that potentially would be, you know, good candidates for the class, they are younger students. So that's helpful as well, because we have students who could grow with that class and remain in the program for several years. I don't know if that helps answer that question.
Thanks, Superintendent Ballo. Maria, did you have a follow-up?
I guess it sounds like there isn't a big wait list issue, if I'm interpreting your answer correctly.
I would say through you, there's a big wait list. I would say, in all fairness, we know that there are 6 places in that class. So part of the conversation at the school level is, you know, offering those placements and having those conversations. We wouldn't put it out there that we had 20 spaces. So potentially we could have more people who are interested in that class. And I guess the only way we would know that for sure is if we were able to engage in more conversations with more parents. And I think I did say that at the board meeting as well. We would need to determine if it's an option, and then we would have to gauge interest from parents. I think that would be fair before going out to parents to see if it's something that they would be interested in, just thinking about like our process.
Right, okay. I guess just one other sort of curious thing. I know the cost for the transportation was $60,000 per run, and it was presented as a flat rate, like per run per region. Yep. I was just a bit surprised that it would be a flat rate, because And wouldn't it depend on how many students there are in the run? Because I know with these types of students, you're typically picking them up, you know, at their home, right? You're not going to one stop to pick up like 6 students.
Mm-hmm.
So more students is more stops, and each one is a bit more of a, you know, they're not just all climbing on the bus. It's a bit of a process, right? So is the cost really flat for, like, if you had 1 student in Burlington versus if you had 5, would that not change the cost? I was just surprised at that.
That's a really good question. And Jody did quite a bit of the legwork around transportation, so I'm sure she's happy to speak to that piece. But the chart does reflect the cost, and I'll have her expand on that.
Yeah, hi, thanks through you, Madam Chair. And Maria, you're right. I was actually a bit surprised with that too, but it sort of is a flat cost. It was slightly more to go up to the north, but not by much. And I think, and it would fluctuate slightly depending how many stops there are, but really not much. And when it came down to it, it is about that per run, per region.
Okay, that's really interesting, but thank you for that. I'm an accountant, so like I think about these things and the formula, you know, but interesting.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, thanks so much. Was there any other questions?
I also had a question, Brenda. It's Liesel. I was wondering what the difference, Madam Chair, sorry, I'm still learning the proper terminology
It's
I should
okay.
be using. I apologize.
It's okay.
Just in terms of the difference between a CLC classroom as opposed to other self-contained classrooms that the board currently offers, is the difference that the medically fragile piece, is that what I'm understanding? What's quite the difference? Because it does seem, when you read about the classroom, it does seem surprising to me that there's only one. So, or that there's only 6 students that would fit a profile that would fit into that type of classroom.
So I'm just looking at my list here. Who wants to take that one, Jody or Stephanie?
Sure, I can take that.
Okay, thanks, Jody.
Definitely jump in if she wants, but that's a great question again. Asking lots of great questions tonight. So the CLC, you're right. It's basically down to that medically fragile profile, and the reason that it's a lower number. Other than the STC and ESC are higher, they are based on standards that are identified in the policy, ministry spec ed policy, because they have a number of needs that need to be addressed in the class that may include nursing, lifting and toileting and those pieces. There might be a nurse in the class. They may require 2-in-1 support. So we understand that there's also a number of human resources that go along with that profile of students. So to be able to support them properly and with their equipment that they have and the sensory needs, it is a low number, and it does come down to that medically fragile profile.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Rick, you had a question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question about, and I apologize if I missed this, but so the reports here, what would be the next steps then? Would it be more studies, or like reaching out to parents, or to get moving, I guess, on the next project, or where the site would be? I know there's a lot of students in Milton, and it's obviously a high growth area, but is it more studies? Is it more reach out to parents? Is it commitments from parents? I just want to know what the next steps would be after the report.
Yeah, so certainly Stephanie can jump in, but I think that'll sort of be up to what the trustees I guess establish that they want to do with the report, but also any further input that comes from staff on this matter. So it was a lot of information, obviously, to consider. There is there is a great cost at expanding this program. So I think that, we would really have to establish the need and the want for it. Is there an interest in it? Do we not have as Stephanie said, do we not have people waitlisted? Because with these students, you need to make a decision you do invest on them going into their home school. If they're not going to go into this program, are they not going into this program because there isn't room in the program? So I think those are all the types of things that will have to be looked at. And at this time, it's just sitting there as a report. So it would be, up to either the Board of Trustees or to staff to take a look at whether or not this would move to a next step as far as consideration of expansion. I could be wrong, but that would be my comment on that.
That's great. Thank you, Brenda.
I was going to say thank you. And through you, Madam Chair, I would agree with that. So whether it comes from one of the two avenues, and if it comes from staff, I guess we would need to determine what the interest is and the budgetary pieces.
Right. Great. Thank you. Okay. So our next item, I'm just pulling up my notes. Okay. Just a comment here that SEAC soundbites have been completed for November, December, and January. The November soundbite, what is an IPRC, is posted. All soundbites are posted on the SEAC section of the board site and automatically then posted on all school sites under the news tab. And we will be looking for volunteers to write some soundbites from February until June. So if you have any ideas, if you have some suggestions, if you want to profile your association, if there's a particular topic that we think would be important to include in our SEAC soundbites, please let us know, and we would love to have you help us out by writing an article. Yep, go ahead, Dan.
So that will be by email, or we can make a suggestion now?
Well, are you volunteering to write one?
Yes, I do for month of March.
Yeah, for sure. March is yours. What would you like to write about?
It's the Down Syndrome Day on March 21st. And I guess there's a number of activities that are taking place from the organization and I guess around the world on that. And we just wanted to draw the attention to it.
Yeah. So thank you, Dan. What you might want to consider, and I'm just putting this out there, is depending on Andrea, when would that CX soundbite go out? Would that go out? Could we get that out prior to the 21st? We could, right? I think the answer is we could. Sure. The only reason I'm saying that, Dan, is that if you wanted to highlight that event in March and speak to that contest and speak about that, we just want to make sure that the soundbite would go out prior to it happening. So Andrea says, yeah, usually the first of the month. So if you could get that to us, well in advance, then we can make sure that we can get that out at the beginning of the month, and that way people have got it in advance of your event.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Rhonda, you had your hand up as well.
Hi, Brenda. Could Voice do April? Because May is speech and hearing month, and we also have the conference coming up and all that. So we would like to write for April.
Perfect.
Got it.
Love it. All right. That's great. So March and April is taken care of. Oh, that's great. So Andrea is going to send you a template, Dan and Rhonda. And if anybody, like I said, would like to write one, please let us know. We always have fallbacks, but it's great to have new content. And, we have had people requesting them. We get some fairly good traction with them. So anything that we can do would be great, just to continue to let people know who SEAC is and some of the things that are important to us. So that would be wonderful. Okay, so meeting summary, we've got a couple of follow-ups. I know, Maria, you've got a question that we want to get back to you on with respect to transportation. And Denise is going to send us some information around the goal about writing to the ministries about the SLP piece. So we will gather that and bring that back to SEAC. Our next meeting is on Monday, December the 13th. Let me just look here. Okay. So resolution for absenteeism, we have resolved that Samantha Sweet be excused. Do I have someone that can move that?
I can move that, Brenda. It's Maria.
Thanks, Maria. Do I have anyone that can second that?
I can. It's Liesel.
Great. Thanks, Lisa. I appreciate that. And so we have adjournment and closing prayer. Is there anyone that would like to make a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn is Dan.
Thanks, Dan. Seconded?
Seconded by Rick.
Thanks, Rick. Okay. Just gonna wait, pull up our prayer here. Okay, perfect. If you will join me in the Son of our faith, in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Blessed are you, O God of all creation. Each day you spread before us the rich and wonderful diversity of the human family created in the divine splendor of your love. Fashioned in your image, you call us to love one another with the same tender care with which you brought us to creation. Each one of us is but one small part of the glory that is you. As we serve the students and families of the Halton Catholic District School Board on the Special Education Advisory Committee, fill us with your grace, guide us with your wisdom, and give us the strength and courage to do your work so that it may always be said of our every act, God saw that it was good. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Thank you everyone for participating. I look forward to seeing you at our next meeting, and take care.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.